Charlie Munger, Warren Buffett's brilliant right-hand man and one of history's greatest investors, made a shocking confession that sent ripples through the investment community. He admitted he could have been twice as wealthy if not for a single critical mistake he made decades earlier. Think about that. One of the most successful investors of all time, acknowledging that a fundamental error cost him half his potential fortune. What if I told you that the financial strategy you've religiously followed for decades could be silently draining your wealth right now? Imagine discovering that the very savings approach financial advisors have been recommending to you all these years is actually setting you up for retirement disaster after you turn 50. Has this ever happened to you? You look at your retirement accounts and feel that gnawing anxiety that despite doing everything by the book, maximizing your 401k, diversifying your portfolio, and following conventional wisdom, you're somehow still falling behind. You're not alone, and there's a profound reason why. This revelation points to something the financial industry doesn't want you to realize. What works brilliantly in your 30s and 40s can actively sabotage your wealth after 50. The rules of the game change dramatically in the second half of life, yet most people continue playing by the old rulebook, watching their hard-earned savings erode before their eyes. The most dangerous aspect of this wealth-destroying phenomenon is something I call the compounding of errors. We've all heard about the magic of compound interest, how your good investments grow exponentially over time. But what financial advisors never mention is that your mistakes compound too, and they compound even faster after 50. A single poor financial decision in your later years creates devastating ripple effects that become increasingly impossible to recover from as you age. The conventional wisdom pushing you to aggressively chase returns to catch up on retirement might be the very thing destroying your financial security when you have the least time to rebuild. Stay with me until the end of this video, because what you're about to discover might completely transform how you think about wealth building in the second half of life. I'll reveal the counterintuitive strategies that truly successful retirees use, approaches that fly directly in the face of mainstream financial advice. But before we begin, please hit the like button and let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world. And if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our future videos. The financial establishment has been selling us a dangerous narrative about saving and investing after 50, one that serves their interests far more than yours. The truth is, there comes a pivotal moment in your financial journey where everything you thought you knew about building wealth becomes obsolete. And continuing down that familiar path leads directly to what I call the retirement danger zone. Let's explore why this happens, and more importantly, what you can do to protect yourself. This pivotal transformation in your financial journey typically happens around age 50, when the fundamental rules of wealth building undergo a seismic shift that most financial advisors never discuss. Think about it. When you're in your 30s and 40s, taking calculated risks makes perfect sense. Those are what I call your offensive years, where aggressive growth strategies can pay off handsomely because you have decades to recover from the inevitable market downturns. But here's the hidden truth that Wall Street doesn't want you to recognize. After 50, the clock that once gave you the gift of long-term compounding begins working against you. Every year becomes more precious, and the runway for recovery shrinks dramatically. This is precisely when Munger insists you must make a decisive mindset shift, from playing financial offense to playing relentless defense. I've witnessed this journey unfold countless times in real people's lives. There's a particular tragedy in watching someone in their late 50s or early 60s, feeling the pressure of inadequate savings, make one desperate lunge for financial security through aggressive investments. The results are often devastating, creating Ripple effects that impact families for generations. What makes this revelation so powerful is that it represents a complete reversal of conventional financial wisdom. Every headline, every commercial, every advisor's standard playbook keeps pushing the narrative that you need to chase higher returns, especially if you're behind on retirement savings. Take more risk, they say. Find the next Tesla, they urge. You need to make up for lost time, they insist. But this advice fundamentally misunderstands the true danger facing investors past 50. The real threat isn't underperformance, it's catastrophic loss. This distinction represents a profound transformation in perspective that can protect your financial future or destroy it if misunderstood. Think about the mathematics for a moment. If you're 60 years old with $500,000 saved and you lose half in a market crash or failed investment, you're not just down to $250,000. You're down to $250,000 with potentially only 5 to 10 working years left to make up the difference. The psychological impact alone can be crushing, often leading to even more desperate decisions that compound the damage. That same 50% loss for a 30-year-old is an entirely different scenario. They might have 30-plus years of earnings, savings, and compounding ahead of them. The impact is dramatically different, not because the percentage is different, but because the recovery timeline is fundamentally altered. This isn't about pessimism or fear. It's about clear-eyed realism and protecting the wealth you've spent decades building. The journey to financial security after 50 requires a complete recalibration of how you think about risk, returns, and the true meaning of investment success. Now, I want to go even deeper into this critical insight from one of history's greatest investment minds. The true danger for investors past 50 isn't merely underperformance. It's something far more devastating that few financial advisors will ever tell you about. If you've noticed this offense-to-defense shift in your own financial thinking, write "defense mode activated" in the comments below. The devastating reality of this recovery timeline problem becomes even more apparent when we look at real-world retirement scenarios. Consider two investors who both experience a 50% market downturn. For the 35-year-old, this setback is painful but surmountable. They have potentially 3 decades of peak earning years ahead, allowing them to increase contributions, adjust their strategy, and let compound growth heal the wound over time. Their journey to recovery, while challenging, follows a natural progression. But for the 60-year-old, this same percentage loss creates an entirely different narrative. They don't just lose money, they lose irreplaceable time. With retirement looming and possibly facing reduced income or health challenges that limit working capacity, the path to recovery becomes exponentially steeper. This mathematical reality transforms what might have been a comfortable retirement into years of financial anxiety or forced employment well beyond their intended exit date. The revelation here is profound. Your savings strategy after 50 must account for this compressed timeline. This doesn't mean abandoning growth entirely. Inflation remains a very real threat to your purchasing power. But it does require a fundamental recalibration of how you balance risk and reward when the luxury of time is no longer on your side. If you found these insights valuable for your financial journey, hit that subscribe button and join our community of thoughtful investors who value substance over hype. This brings us to perhaps the most powerful mindset transformation that Munger advocates for investors in their second half of life. For decades, we've been conditioned by financial media, investment platforms, and even well-meaning advisors to fear missing out on the next big thing. The constant drumbeat of "don't miss." This opportunity creates a psychological architecture that subtly pushes us toward increasingly risky decisions. But Munger's approach completely flips this framework on its head. After 50, you should instead fear being wiped out. This psychological shift from what I call FOMO, fear of missing out, to FOBO, fear of blowing out, creates an entirely new decision blueprint that naturally steers you toward more prudent choices aligned with your true financial needs at this stage of life. Think about how this transformation changes everything. When operating from FOMO, missing the latest crypto surge or tech stock explosion feels like failure. But when operating from FOBO, preserving your hard-earned capital feels like victory. This isn't about becoming ultra-conservative or burying money in the backyard. It's about recognizing that the journey to financial security in your 50s, 60s, and beyond requires a completely different navigation system than the one that got you here. I've witnessed this psychological breakthrough in countless investors who finally recognize that sleeping well at night is actually worth more than the possibility of spectacular gains. This shift in perspective often leads to better decision-making and, ironically, better long-term performance. The paradox here is beautiful. By focusing less on maximizing returns and more on minimizing catastrophic losses, many investors actually end up wealthier over time. Now, I want to address perhaps the most destructive force in investment psychology, something Munger identified that silently destroys more portfolios than almost any other factor, especially after the age milestone we've been discussing. If you've made this crucial shift in your own thinking from FOMO to FOBO, type safety first in the comments below. This destructive force that Munger identified is our cultural obsession with excitement and novelty in investing, something that becomes particularly dangerous after 50. Our society relentlessly glorifies the thrilling, the innovative, the disruptive. We celebrate overnight crypto millionaires, app developers who strike it rich, and day traders who claim to have cracked the market code. These stories dominate headlines while creating a dangerously distorted view of what successful investing actually looks like. But here's the paradigm shift that transformed Munger's own journey. After 50, boring becomes beautiful. The revelation here is both counterintuitive and profound. The less thrilling your investment approach in the second half of life, the more thrilling your actual retirement is likely to be. This represents a complete inversion of conventional wisdom that few have the courage to embrace. Think about this paradox for a moment. Financial excitement in your 60s, 70s, and beyond comes not from watching volatile investments swing wildly day by day, but from having the freedom and security that comes with steady, reliable returns. There's a certain poetry in the idea that the most thrilling investment portfolio after 50 is one so boring it barely deserves a second glance. I've witnessed this transformation unfold in countless investors, that magical moment when they finally realize that sleeping well at night, traveling when they want, helping their grandchildren, and pursuing passions without financial anxiety are worth infinitely more than the adrenaline rush of speculative bets. This breakthrough in perspective often leads to not just greater peace of mind, but ironically, better long-term performance. Now, if we look deeper at the blueprint of financial disasters, the events that destroyed decades of careful wealth building overnight, we discover something remarkable. Almost all financial catastrophes share a common architecture, regardless of the specific investment vehicle involved. They almost always include some toxic combination of borrowed money, speculative positions, and instruments so complex that even their creators barely understand the risks. This insight gives us a powerful framework for protection. After 50, your savings strategy must methodically avoid leverage, debt, speculation, and unnecessary complexity. Elements that might temporarily boost returns, but dramatically increase your vulnerability to market shocks precisely when you have the least time to recover. Consider the fundamental mechanics at play here. Leverage, using borrowed money to amplify returns, also amplifies losses and can force liquidations at the worst possible moments, speculation, betting on short-term price movements rather than underlying value, transforms investing into gambling. Complexity, strategies and products with multiple moving parts and hidden correlations introduces risks that can't be properly evaluated or mitigated. The revelation emerges with crystal clarity. The path to financial security after 50 isn't about finding increasingly exotic investment vehicles or complex strategies. It's about systematically eliminating these architectural elements of disaster from your financial life. This doesn't mean abandoning growth entirely. Inflation remains a very real threat to your retirement security. But it does mean recognizing that simplicity, transparency, and sustainability become your most powerful allies in the journey ahead. Looking at the landscape of those who've achieved genuine financial independence in their later years reveals a pattern that directly contradicts mainstream financial advice. If you've embraced this shift towards simplicity and boring reliability in your own investment approach, type "boring is beautiful" in the comments. Now, let's examine what Munger identifies as perhaps the most insidious force in investment psychology, something that silently destroys more portfolios than almost any other factor. With characteristic wisdom, Munger calls envy the dumbest of the 7 deadly sins. For a brilliant reason. It's the only one that provides absolutely no pleasure in return. This revelation goes beyond finance into the realm of human psychology. Think about that for a moment. Greed at least gives you momentary satisfaction. Gluttony offers temporary pleasure. But envy? It delivers nothing but misery. Yet this emotion drives countless financial decisions, particularly after 50, when the stakes are highest and recovery time shortest. The sobering truth is that portfolios are rarely destroyed by an inability to earn. They're destroyed by the toxic comparison game that drives people to abandon sound strategies when they see others apparently getting rich quicker. This competitive impulse, hardwired into our brains through millennia of evolution, becomes particularly dangerous after 50, when recovery from mistakes becomes increasingly difficult. I've witnessed this pattern repeat with tragic regularity in real people's lives. The neighbor buys a luxury car. The brother-in-law brags about a crypto windfall. The colleague mentions their tech stock gains at lunch. And suddenly, decades of disciplined investing seem inadequate. In these moments of weakness, sound financial foundations are abandoned for speculative gambles that often end in tears. The breakthrough comes when you realize that financial independence isn't a competition. Your neighbor's investment returns have precisely zero impact on your ability to achieve your goals. The only score that matters is whether your strategy provides the resources you need for the life you want to live. This mental freedom, releasing yourself from the tyranny of comparison, represents one of the most powerful transformations possible in your financial journey. This envy factor becomes even more lethal as we age. What's merely unwise in our 30s becomes potentially catastrophic after 50. The reason is simple but profound. Time horizon. When you're younger, an envious mistake might set you back a few years. After 50, that same envious decision can erase decades of patient compounding, leaving insufficient time for recovery. This insight connects directly to another of Munger's most candid admissions, his regret about selling great businesses too soon. With characteristic bluntness, he acknowledges this as one of his biggest financial mistakes. When you discover a truly exceptional business, the winning strategy is often breathtakingly simple. Just hold it. Don't overthink it. Don't try to time the market. Don't worry about short-term fluctuations. Just hold. The psychology behind this wisdom reveals a fascinating paradox of human nature. We tend to do exactly the opposite of what serves our financial interests, selling winners too early to lock in gains while stubbornly clinging to losers, hoping they'll recover. This behavioral pattern is so consistent, it might as well be hardwired into our DNA. This pattern of simply holding great businesses brings us to another counterintuitive truth that Munger discovered through decades of market observation, one that completely inverts conventional wisdom about sophisticated investing strategies. If you've ever experienced the regret of selling a great investment too soon, type "diamond hands" in the comments to acknowledge this common investing pitfall that even legends like Munger struggled with. This counterintuitive truth that Munger discovered through decades of market observation reveals something profound. The relationship between certainty and accuracy is often inverse. In other words, the louder someone proclaims their market predictions, the more likely they are to be catastrophically wrong. This revelation challenges the very foundation of how most people consume financial information, especially after 50. Think about the pundits and experts you see on financial networks or read in investment newsletters. The ones who speak with unwavering confidence about exactly where interest rates will be next year, precisely which sectors will outperform, or definitively which currencies will strengthen. Munger's observation cuts to the heart of this theatre. Throughout market history, those who sounded most certain were consistently the ones who lost the most money, both for themselves and their followers. The wisdom here transcends investing and touches on a fundamental truth about human knowledge. The world is simply too complex, too interconnected, and too unpredictable for any single mind to fully comprehend. The genuine masters of any domain, whether finance, science, or philosophy, are precisely those who have the deepest appreciation for the limits of their understanding. This insight leads to a profound awakening. Successful investing isn't about being a know-it-all. It's about the opposite. It's about recognizing what you don't understand and having the discipline to avoid those areas entirely. This intellectual honesty creates a boundary around your financial decisions, keeping you safely within your circle of competence, which becomes increasingly crucial after 50. The transformation here is psychological rather than technical. It requires developing something remarkably rare in today's culture: the courage to say, "I don't know." These three simple words, so difficult for many successful people to utter, become a superpower when applied to investment decisions. By acknowledging the limits of your understanding, you naturally avoid betting on nonsense and stick to areas where you can make reasonable judgments. Berkshire Hathaway's investment approach exemplifies this principle perfectly. They understood insurance, so they bought insurance companies. They understood consumer brands like Coca-Cola and See's candies, so they bought them. And critically, they simply ignored industries they didn't understand, regardless of how trendy or promising they appeared to others. For more uncommon wisdom that can protect and grow your wealth after 50, subscribe to our channel, where we focus on timeless investment principles rather than get-rich-quick schemes. This selective approach saved them from countless disasters over the decades. During the dot-com bubble, they avoided technology stocks not because they thought they were overvalued, though they were, but because Buffett and Munger didn't understand them well enough. They received mockery at the time for missing the opportunity of a lifetime, until the bubble burst and their patience was vindicated. The revelation here goes beyond simply avoiding losses. It's about the freedom that comes with abandoning the exhausting pretense of omniscience. The weight lifted when you no longer feel compelled to have an opinion on everything, from Bitcoin to biotech, from interest rates to international politics, creates mental space for deeper thinking in areas where you actually possess insight. This intellectual honesty connects perfectly with another fundamental shift Munger advocates for investors over 50, a transformation that completely reframes how you think about your relationship with money and work. Have you experienced the relief that comes from saying, "I don't know," instead of pretending to understand something complex? Type intellectual honesty in the comments if you felt this liberating shift in your own approach to investing or life decisions. Now, let's explore another profound mindset transformation that Munger advocates for investors over 50. One that completely reframes how you think about your relationship with money and work. This transformation from employee thinking to owner thinking may sound subtle, but it represents one of the most profound mental revolutions you can undergo on your wealth-building journey, especially after 50. Most people, even highly educated, successful professionals, spend their entire lives trapped in employee thinking. They optimize for promotions, prestigious titles, corner offices, and perks. They measure success by salary increases and status symbols. There's nothing inherently wrong with career advancement, but Munger points out a brutal truth. Titles don't compound. Ownership does. This revelation illuminates the fundamental difference between these two approaches. Employees focus on looking important and climbing hierarchies. Owners focus on possessing things that generate cash while they sleep. An employee asks, "How do I please my boss?" An owner asks, "Does this make money long-term?" Only one of these questions leads to durable wealth. I've witnessed this breakthrough moment for countless professionals, doctors, lawyers, executives, who suddenly realize they've been playing the wrong game. Despite decades of six-figure incomes, many find themselves with impressive job titles but minimal assets that work independently of their time and effort. They've been running on an increasingly sophisticated treadmill, but a treadmill nonetheless. The awakening often comes with a startling realization. Even high-income professionals are just a few missed paychecks away from financial pressure if they haven't developed ownership mindsets alongside their careers. This vulnerability becomes increasingly dangerous after 50, when recovery options narrow dramatically. What makes this particularly urgent after 50 is the brutal arithmetic of time. In your 30s and 40s, you can reasonably expect decades of productive work ahead. The luxury of time allows you to recover from setbacks or slowly build ownership positions. After 50, the window narrows. You simply don't have enough remaining productive years to keep trading your diminishing energy for dollars. The transition to ownership becomes not just desirable, but essential. With characteristic bluntness, Munger distilled his success formula to 3 simple subtractions: avoiding debt, avoiding drama, and avoiding dumb people. The power in this framework lies in its emphasis on prevention rather than action. Debt acts as a magnifier of mistakes, transforming recoverable errors into financial catastrophes. Drama wastes precious mental energy that could otherwise be directed toward clear thinking. And dumb people, by which Munger means those who are reckless, dishonest, or addicted to shortcuts, create a form of social contagion that inevitably affects your own judgment. What's remarkable about this triad is how it contradicts conventional wisdom about wealth building. Most financial advice focuses on what to do, which stocks to buy, which strategies to employ, which opportunities to seize. Munger's approach inverts this completely, suggesting that what you don't do matters far more than what you do, especially after 50. This revelation creates a decision framework based on subtraction rather than addition, on removing negative influences rather than constantly seeking positive ones. The impact becomes increasingly profound after 50, when the margin for error shrinks dramatically. Has this distinction between employee thinking and owner thinking created an aha moment for you? Type ownership mindset in the comments if you've been contemplating this crucial transformation in your own financial journey. This protection-based philosophy leads naturally to another critical revelation about the mathematical reality that governs all financial outcomes. It's a truth so fundamental that most people overlook it entirely. The revelation that often surprises even sophisticated investors is how powerful steady compounding becomes over 15 plus years when you simply avoid major mistakes. A reliable 7% return, consistently achieved and reinvested, doubles your money approximately every decade. This means that with just 15 years of patience, your capital can grow by 2.8 times without taking extraordinary risks. By focusing on the marathon rather than the sprint, you allow the miracle of compounding to do the heavy lifting while you sleep, travel, or enjoy family time. This mathematical reality reveals something profound about wealth. Building after 50, the frantic pursuit of spectacular returns often leads to precisely the kind of catastrophic mistakes that destroy capital. Meanwhile, the patient investor who achieves reasonable, consistent returns ends up substantially wealthier simply by avoiding those errors and letting time work its magic. The transformation happens when you shift your focus from the daily noise of market movements to the powerful long-term trend of compound growth. This perspective shift creates a remarkable sense of calm. The daily financial headlines become less urgent, the market's short-term gyrations less concerning. You develop the emotional resilience to stay the course when others panic because you understand the underlying mathematical reality. I've witnessed this inner revolution in countless investors who finally grasped the genuine power of compounding. They stop chasing the latest hot stock tip or investment fad. They abandon the exhausting pursuit of timing market tops and bottoms. Instead, they construct robust portfolios of quality assets, and then, this is the crucial part, they simply let them work. Now, I want to address what might be Munger's most fundamental insight, one so simple it's often overlooked, yet so powerful it underpins everything else. The mathematical reality that governs all financial outcomes is brutally straightforward. If you don't spend less than you earn, no investment strategy on earth can save you. This truth transcends sophistication, education, and income level. People with seven-figure salaries routinely end up broke in retirement because they consistently live beyond their means. Meanwhile, modest earners with disciplined spending habits often retire in comfort because they understood and respected this fundamental arithmetic. Munger's observation here illuminates a profound disconnect in financial education. We obsess over investment returns, asset allocation, and market timing while often ignoring the behavioral foundation that makes wealth accumulation possible in the first place. The journey to financial independence begins not with clever stock picking, but with the radical act of living below your means, consistently and without exception. The transformation happens when you realize that every dollar not spent becomes a soldier in your financial army, working tirelessly to produce more dollars through investment returns. This compounding effect creates a virtuous cycle that accelerates over time, but it cannot begin without the discipline to resist unnecessary consumption. If you've experienced this fundamental shift in perspective, recognizing that financial freedom starts with spending discipline rather than investment brilliance, drop "arithmetic works" in the comments. Now let's explore how this fundamental arithmetic combines with everything we've discussed to create a comprehensive framework for financial security after 50. The ability to live below your means isn't just about basic financial discipline. It represents a profound philosophical stance toward life itself. When you consistently spend less than you earn, you're making a radical declaration of independence from the consumption treadmill that traps so many people, particularly as they advance in their careers. As we reflect on Munger's legacy, it's clear that his greatest contribution isn't just the billions he accumulated alongside Warren Buffett. It's his practical philosophy distilled from nearly a century of observing human financial behavior. The wisdom he shares cuts against much of what passes for financial advice in popular media. Yet, it resonates because it aligns with fundamental truths about human nature and mathematical reality. The journey to financial security after 50 isn't about financial acrobatics or chasing the next big thing. It's about patience, discipline, and avoiding catastrophic mistakes. It's about embracing simplicity when others chase complexity. It's about focusing on durability rather than spectacular returns. These principles may sound simple, and intellectually they are. But implementing them consistently in the face of market volatility, peer pressure, and our own psychological weaknesses, that's anything but easy. If you found value in these insights today, I'd love to have you join our community of thoughtful investors by subscribing to the channel. We're building something special here, a space where we can explore these transformative ideas together, away from the noise and hype of mainstream financial media. Drop Munger's mirror in the comments if you recognized yourself or your own financial journey somewhere in this discussion. Your experience might help someone else who's navigating these same waters. If you appreciated this deeper dive into investment wisdom that goes beyond the typical financial advice, hitting that like button helps our community grow with more people who value substance over hype. I've prepared another video that explores how to actually implement some of these principles in today's market environment. It's a perfect companion to what we've discussed today. Click right here and let's continue the conversation. After all, as Munger himself might say, the journey to financial wisdom isn't a sprint. It's a lifelong marathon best run with good company.